On May 25, 1969, United Artists released the film Midnight Cowboy, which starred Jon Voight. He played a Texas transplant named Joe Buck, and Dustin Hoffman, who was the sleazy Ratso Rizzo. Both of these characters were street hustlers in New York. The screenplay was written by Waldo Salt, and the film was directed by John Schlesinger. It depicts this unlikely friendship between these two hustlers. The movie almost didn't happen because the director and the producer had difficulty finding a screenwriter who wanted to take on the project. They attempted to get Truman Capote, and he turned it down. And then Gore Vidal told them that the novel that it was based on was simply trash. They eventually contacted Waldo Salt, and he agreed to write the screenplay. Casting turned out to be pretty hard, too. The director didn't want either Voight or Hoffman in the movie, and he looked far and wide for other alternatives. Eventually, he just gave up and changed his mind and just went ahead and started shooting the film. Everyone that was involved in the film felt like the director didn't really like it very much and didn't enjoy shooting it. The filming itself was quite a bizarre one. The crew ended up using what's called stolen shots in the movie's New York scenes. This means that the extras in the movie weren't actually aware that they were being filmed. The extras in the Texas shoot were aware of it, but they weren't told what the movie was about. And many of them were incensed once they found out the true story behind the film. The film was a surprise hit upon its release, despite some really skeptical reviews. This controversial movie managed to gross $44 million. It also produced a hit song, Harry Nilsson's Everybody's Talkin'. At this time in movie making, almost all the filmmakers associated Dustin Hoffman with the character of Benjamin Braddock, the clean-cut 20-something guy that he played in The Graduate. Hoffman knew that this all-American image that he had would be a detriment when he auditioned for the film. To prove that he could make the change and do this totally different character, when he was asked to audition for the film executives, he talked them into meeting him on the street corner in Manhattan. In the meantime, he dressed himself up in filthy rags. The executive arrived at the appointed corner and waited, barely noticing the beggar less than 10 feet away, who was accosting people for spare change. This beggar was Hoffman, and he eventually walked up to him and revealed his true identity. Now, Mike Nichols, who was the director of The Graduate, did everything he could to try to talk Dustin Hoffman out of taking this role. He felt like Hoffman should keep up his romantic lead image. He called the actor and said, "Are you crazy? I just made you a star, and you're going to take this ugly character who is a supporting part to Jon Voight. What in the world are you doing? Why are you sabotaging your career?" Hoffman stuck to his guns and went ahead and took the role. And he kind of relished the fact that his true job was a character actor. And that was his big desire in Hollywood, is to transform from one character to the next. Jon Voight auditioned for the role of Joe Buck, and he really wanted the part. But the producers didn't really like him. They had chosen Michael Sarrazin, whose major claim to fame at that time was from the film They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Fortunately for Voight, the producers changed their mind and their opinion about him after the first actor demanded more money. They ended up doing side-by-side comparisons of the two actors, and they felt that Jon Voight was actually a better actor. Dustin Hoffman ended up tipping the scales even more by his endorsement of Jon Voight in the role. Voight was so desperate to play Joe Buck that he worked for scale. He told his agent to tell him that he would do the part for nothing. They came pretty close to doing that. He got the very minimum for his role, and then at the end of the shoot, They actually sent him a bill for $14.73 for meals that he ate during the last day of filming. When Voight and the director wrapped filming in Texas, Voight noticed how red the director's face was. He was really concerned that he might be having a heart attack or some kind of medical issue. He asked him if he was okay, and the director looked up at him and said, "What have we done? What were we thinking when we filmed this movie? We just made a film about a dishwasher that lives in New York and sleeps with a lot of women." He was shaking terribly bad as he was expressing his feelings to Voight. Voight let him go on and finish, and then he grabbed the director and started to shake him by his shoulders. He told him that they would live the rest of their artistic lives in the shadow of this great masterpiece, which was a bunch of bull. He had no clue that the film was going to do as well as it did. He was just trying to get the director to come to sanity again. That ended up snapping the director out of it, and the statement he made went on to be true. What really made the chemistry between Hoffman and Voight work so well together was that they were constantly competing with one another. Hoffman had become a movie star before Voight did, and that brought out some jealousy on the set. But they knew that the movie depended on a bond between them. Throughout the entire shoot, they would say to each other out of the sides of their mouths, "Buddy, is that the best you can do?" Their chemistry spurred each other on to a better portrayal of their characters. The scene in which Joe and Ratso attempt to walk across the street and almost get hit by a cab was filmed basically guerrilla style, with a camera and a van across the street. It was an extremely difficult scene to film because there were real pedestrians and real traffic, and the director wanted to do it in one shot. He didn't want to cut at all. He wanted the actors to walk like half a block, and the first time they did it, the signal turned red. The director was getting really upset, and he came rushing out of the van and told them to keep walking. They told him that they couldn't. There was traffic coming. They figured out how to properly time the walk, but then they almost got run over by a cab. Hoffman's quick-thinking brain reacted, and he started saying, "I'm walking here," meaning that they were shooting the scene here. And that was the first time that they got the filming right. Dustin Hoffman spent a considerable amount of time learning this character by going to the New York City slums and observing tramps and street people, studying their every move and their behavior. He even went as far as to place little pebbles in his shoes to make him limp. This allowed him to limp without ever having to think about it. His performance as Ratso is ranked number 7 on Premiere Magazine's 100 Greatest Performances of All Time. Jon Voight was determined, too, to give his role that true Texan look. He took a tape recorder with him the first time that he went down to Big Spring, Texas, when they were doing some pre-production planning, and he recorded the voices of various Texans that he interviewed while he was down there. He played back those tapes incessantly and drove the rest of the cast crazy. He got his Texas drawl down perfect, though. Dustin Hoffman thought that the movie might end up ruining his career. The actor ended up attending a preview of the film, and he noticed that people walked out in droves. You see, 20 minutes into the film, Jon Voight's character has a gay sex scene in the balcony with a character played by Bob Balaban. And at that point, people just got up and walked out of the theater. At that point, he thought he really had some big problems because there had been rumors that the film was going to have an X rating. And doing that would basically ruin his career. At least that's what a reasonable man would think. The film was rated X upon its original release in 1969. Because of the popularity of the film, it was given a new rating of R, without anything in the film being changed or removed. It remains the only X-rated film to win an Oscar for Best Picture. Looking back on the film today, The director thinks that nobody would ever allow this film to be produced. He states that if he took a story about a dishwasher from Texas who goes to New York dressed as a cowboy to fulfill his fantasy of living off rich women, who ends up meeting a crippled consumptive who later pees his pants and dies on a bus, would you produce that film? I don't think so. The director would have been shown the door. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.